What's up, Dxanex here. I am here to talk about the Focal Elear and the Sony MDR-Z1R. I'll go more in depth on the construction of these two when I do their individual reviews, but man, I gotta say, both of these are built like tanks. This is what high-end headphones should feel like. I'll even give them a little shake test and you can hear that neither of them really make much noise. Nothing wiggles, nothing jingles. The Focal Elear is a little bit heavier at 450 grams. The Sony Z1R weighs in at a little bit lighter, 385 grams. But the Focal Elear does a really great job of distributing that weight and never felt overly heavy to me. The Elear does have more clamping force though. You'll definitely feel the clamping force, but it never bothered me. But the Sony Z1Rs, man, they just feel like luscious, high-end pillows just sitting right on your head. Just a great feeling. But I do have to give that edge to the Sonys. I just love putting these on my head. They feel incredible. It's the same feeling as sitting in a luxury car. Putting these on your head, it just feels luxurious and awesome. Now the cups on the Z1R are huge. I've got pretty big hands, so you can see, man, these things are big. The Focal Elear, full around the ear headphones, but they are more compact. The cups on the Elear are very deep, and I never had any issues with my ears touching the drivers. I mean, these things have a lot of space. In comparison to the cups on the Z1R, the cups are a lot more shallow, and sometimes the tips of my ears would rub up against the Fibonacci grill, so I had to make some minor adjustments just so my ears weren't touching that. Now some of you may want to scream at me and say, hey, why are you comparing an open headphone to a closed design headphone? Honestly, the Z1R sounds every bit as open as the Focal Elear to my ears, if not even more. When you take into account the price, I have to say that I was absolutely blown away by the Focal. The price to performance with them is just simply phenomenal. The Focal Elear really nails everything I love. It's got that tight, punchy bass. It has really detailed but very liquid and buttery mid-range and a smooth, non-fatiguing treble, all in a really, really well-built package. They're just very engaging and very musical sounding. Now, when I first opened up and listened to the Sonys at double the price, I wasn't quite as astonished as I was with the Focal the very first time, I'm not gonna lie, but I was very impressed. So the first thing that I noticed, and I would imagine probably most listeners are gonna notice the first time around, is just the incredibly powerful bass. But make no mistake, I mean, this is clean bass. In fact, I'd say that the Sony probably has the most detailed yet slamming bass I've ever heard on a dynamic driver headphone. It rivals even that of the heavy-hitting planar magnetic headphones that I've heard. In comparison, the Elear's bass is not quite as detailed, with less presence of that deep rumbling sub-bass, but it's still very satisfying, especially on electronic or rock music with lots of punchy kick drums. It's just a treat. However, I gotta really hand it to the Sony Z1R. On some tracks, I could feel that bass right down into the pit of my belly. Let's talk about those mids, gang. The mids on the Focal Elear are a lot more forward and just have this intoxicating liquid nature to them, making them my personal favorite for vocal tunes. And very much like the Sennheiser HD650, the timbre on the Focal Elear is excellent. Pianos and stringed instruments are where they really shine. Mid-range on the Z1R is also incredibly detailed, but way less forward than the Focal Elear, and definitely more detailed, edging out the Focal Elear in the detail department. It's just a little bit easier to really peel apart the layers of the music. You just really can dig deep into those tracks because you just hear every little piece. Whereas the Focal Elear's mids are just very smooth and luscious, and just all flow together very nicely and very musically. So if I have to label these two beauties, I would say that the Focal Elear is certainly more musical sounding, whereas I would call the Z1R somewhat analytical, but very, very fun. Don't think that I mean like sterile analytical. It's a fun sound because it does have that amazing and very powerful bass, but you can still hear all of those little tiny pieces that make up your tunes. I would also like to add that the Focal Elear is definitely a warmer sounding headphone, slightly darker when compared to the Sony's. The Sony Z1R, by no means I would call a cold headphone, but it does definitely lean to the more neutral side of the spectrum, whereas I would say the Focal Elear leans a little more to the darker side of the spectrum. So the treble on the Z1R, it's a little more sibilant than, say, the Focal Elear, but I would say by no means was it fatiguing. Very, very sparkly, making rock music and pop music just an awesome experience on the Sonys. Now the treble on the Elear is slightly smoother due to its warmer, darker nature, I would say, making it an excellent can for jazz if that's your primary genre. Now let's talk about Soundstage on these two beauties. Both are no slouches, but man, the Z1R, very impressive. It's got by far one of the most expansive sound stages I've ever heard on a closed cup design headphone. Now the Focal Elear sometimes sounds just a little slightly wider, but the Z1R by a large margin sounds much taller. You'll be hearing things like way up here and way down here, not so much on these guys though. Because of this height, definitely has this more kind of a spherical nature to its sound stage. It almost sounds like your head is just being kind of surrounded in 360 degrees of sound, and it's just cool. Now in terms of speed, both of these headphones sound very fast and tactile, giving them both a very dynamic quality. These are not really laid back headphones at all. These guys are hard hitting, very exciting, just awesome kick butt headphones. Now as far as driving both of these headphones, both are very easy to drive actually. You could, in theory, run them directly out of like your iPhone, your Android phones. Even when I was listening to tunes on my phone, I was still using a portable amp with both of these. Both were very detailed, both had that great bass slam, but they do scale very nicely on higher end amps. I used them both on my DNA Sonnet 2 OTL tube amp, and they both scaled up very well. The Soundstage became more expansive, the sound in general just became livelier, but we definitely need to address that big ol' elephant in the room. Yeah, that's right, the price to performance ratio. I have to say, man, this Focal Elear, when just speaking in terms of price to performance, I'd say that these guys very plainly, very easily, and very clearly blows the Sony Z1R right out of the water. And at $1,000, the Focal Elear truly could be endgame. Now because the Focal Elear is an open design headphone, these things are pretty much restricted for at-home use only. The looks are just striking. I'm smitten, quite frankly, by the looks of this headphone. I love the Sony's more understated minimalist looks, but man, look at that Focal. Just look at it. But if cost truly is no object, man, I gotta say, go for the Sonys, if only just for the versatility and just the absolutely luxurious feeling on your head. And because of the closed cup design and because this thing can so easily be driven off of a portable amp, you could really use this in any situation. I mean, you could use it on the go or at home. You could use it for travel or at work. And it isolates very well, and it also doesn't leak very much sound at all. Not a lot of clamping force. That smell of that really good leather, oh man, it's just great. They also have just an incredibly fun sound for pretty much every genre I tried them on, from pop to rock to electronic music to jazz. It just did everything so well, and it was so fun to listen to. For those of you guys that are looking for like a more neutral sound, you might want to look elsewhere, because these things, man, they're going to kick you in the teeth. But seriously, guys, you would be very hard-pressed to find a more detailed, elegant looking and feeling, bass slamming, closed-back headphone out there. But thanks a lot for watching my comparison of these two awesome headphones. Remember, these are just my opinions. We all hear things differently. But go ahead and subscribe, because I plan on dropping a lot more videos here very soon. Thanks a lot, guys.